Welcome to Glioblastoma AKA GBM, a podcast brought to you by the Glioblastoma Research Organization, highlighting stories of GBM warriors, caregivers, medical advisors, and more. Welcome to Season 3 of our podcast, where we delve deep into the world of glioblastoma, also known as GBM. Join us as we navigate the complexities of glioblastoma with expert insights and heartfelt narratives. Please remember that the information presented in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended to treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease, and you should contact your medical provider or healthcare team with any questions. Plus Therapeutics is developing a novel treatment for recurrent glioblastoma patients. Their targeted radiotherapeutic has the potential to deliver a single yet highly powerful radiation dose directly to a tumor without damaging healthy tissue or causing significant side effects. They are currently enrolling patients for their NIH-supported RESPECT GBM clinical trial. For more information on this recurrent glioblastoma trial, please visit respect-trials.com/GBM. Dr. Nati, Ben-Shalom,
yes,
welcome to the Glioblastoma AKA GBM Podcast. I am so excited to have you on the show today to talk about not only your job as a neurosurgeon, but also a specialty in neuroplastics. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So starting things off, I'd love for our listeners to hear more about you and just your background of how you got here today.
I'm a neurosurgeon. I was trained all over the world, I would say. Started in med school in Hungary. Then I did my internship in Israel. Then I did my PGY1 general surgery residency at NYU. And then I went to do some neurosurgery in Sweden, back to Israel, Baltimore. But basically, I finished my neurosurgery training in 2021 and decided I want to do something a little bit different than the normal pathway for neurosurgery. And I envision looking for some subspecialties that are very unique and I would say somewhat very necessary. And then I found this new subspecialty called neuroplastic surgery at Johns Hopkins. And to make a long story short, my boss at the time back in Israel told me that there is like excellence award for residents. And he asked me, where do I want to go do my research? And then he opened this big book, The History of Neurosurgery, that was compiled by the Johns Hopkins Department of Neurosurgery. And at the time, I already heard about neuroplastic surgery, and I started to move pages, and I see spine and skull base and endoscopic and tumors. And then I see the only subspecialty that got 2 pages were neuroplastic surgery. Mm-hmm. And I told him, this is where I want to go do research. And he was like, what? Neuroplastic surgery? What is that? What is that? Go to do something that is. I told him, no, this is where I want to go. And he sent me to do a research almost a year in Baltimore. And this is where I really got fascinated and passionate about neuroplastic surgery, then did my clinical fellowship, then combined with tumor fellowship. And here I am talking about neuroplastic surgery and brain tumors.
And for those who don't know, can you explain more about neuroplastic surgery and what it is?
Absolutely. So neuroplastic surgery is a new subspecialty. It's a hybrid, basically combining neurosurgery and plastic surgery. And you would ask, why do you need such a thing? And basically what we discovered that many patients, almost 1 out of 3 patients that having any type of craniotomy have problems after.
That's a high number.
It's a very high number. With their looks, with pains related to hardware, with shunt malfunction, with exposures, with chemo and radiation-induced skin changes that are very challenging for the neurosurgeon. And then are also very challenges to the plastic surgeons, because plastic surgeons are dealing with many areas in the body and they're not really focused on a surgical patient. And as a trainee, I figured or noticed there are a lot of young patients that are having brain surgery, such as brain tumor or low-grade glioma or high-grade glioma or meningiomas. The tumor is completely and safely resected, but they don't look like themselves again. Mm-hmm. And then they have weeks and months of problems with their wound, with hardware, with appearance. They wake up in the mirror, they look at the mirror, they don't look like themselves again. It immediately set them back to the trauma and to the stress of the surgery. And I asked all my teachers, how do we treat those people? And they didn't have good answers. And that's where I started looking around and said, I want to find an answer to those young patients that come to me, well, my tumor is out or the aneurysm is clipped, but I wake up in the morning and I have a severe dent in my forehead. I want to go back to my normal life. I want to find a job. I want to go out, have fun. I don't want anybody to look at me and have, oh, he has something weird. And that's where neuroplastic surgery comes into play, to basically give those patients not only very good reconstruction, but also try to mitigate any risk when they come to surgery.
I feel like getting a neuroplastic surgery procedure is more of an exception, not the rule. What's happening to all those patients that are all over the world? And it's because it's such a subspecialty. Like, what is happening to everyone that doesn't have that opportunity to get that fixed?
Yeah, Amber, this is a great question. And the problem is it's such a new niche. It's such a new subspecialty. There are very few people around the world that were trained. I'm happy and very privileged and humbled to be the only neurosurgeon in the world right now that have this training.
What?
Yeah.
In the whole world?
There was only one neurosurgeon that had a neuroplastic surgeon right now. Hopefully more to come, but currently there is only one.
That's insane. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask how many neuroplastic surgeons are there in the world.
There are total 6 in the world, and only one of them is a neurosurgeon. And I'm very humble and grateful to be that one, to offer patients all over New York that that service. And hopefully we train more people, and we're doing, conferences and symposium. I think the issue here is that when you're a trained neurosurgeon and you're pretty much accustomed to do things the old-fashioned way, right? You have training, you do the old things. That's how you learn. You go to the normal trajectory. I'll go to vascular. I'll go to spine. You really have to have like a visionary mindset. Thanks to my chair, Dr. David Langer, and vice chair, Dr. John Bukvar, that recruited me to start this program, is they see how much they can change in people's life, in the entire spectrum of neurosurgery. And hopefully more and more fellows will come and train and learn how to do this. Right now, we see patients from all over the world because of this very necessary field.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, you talk about the quality of life in patients and how basically having a neuroplastic surgery procedure post a brain tumor surgery. I guess rewind, a quick question is, if someone's getting a brain tumor resection, are you typically, as a neuroplastic surgeon, or do you also work in the same room? Let's say that you're not the head doctor conducting the surgery, or do you guys work in partnership, or do you normally come in for a second procedure? Like, how does that actually work? Yeah,
that's a great point. So basically, the one thing that I will say, Lenox Hill is such a unique place. We always, as you know, work together. Mm-hmm. So I'm dual fellowship trained. So I was trained under Dr. Bukvar to do sophisticated, complex brain tumor removal and the neuroplastic. So we have the skill sets to do both and mitigate those risks for brain tumor procedures.
Got it.
But if my partners, and all of them, has a complex case that patient have been radiated and has a recurrent tumor, or they're already deformed and they need another procedure, and their scalp is not high quality, or they have missing bones, or CSF leak, or pseudomeningocele, like I'm doing today and I showed you. Mm-hmm. This is where I really add value to the surgeon that invites me to do that, and the patient really do so much better. And surprisingly, patients start to ask for a neuroplastic component. So patients that are educated and start to look around and do some research, they would ask a neuroplastic component in a brain tumor surgery. And, the unique thing about, Lenox Hill is that we really work together all the time. So we do cases together on a daily basis to really 2 sets of eyes and 2 sets of hands on every patient, get better outcome for all the obvious reasons.
Yeah. And you talk about how essentially you go in and fix the situation and mitigate whatever may be going on. What does that actually look like? I know you've mentioned offline that there's like 3D models. Can you explain to anyone listening what that procedure actually looks like and how you actually make the difference in their appearance?
Yeah. So basically there are 2 components to this. One is, let's say a patient underwent craniotomy or brain surgery anywhere else, and they unfortunately suffered complications. they lost their bones, they have infection, they have exposed hardware, their scalp is oozing and leaking because of chemo and radiation. And we know that the blood supply to the scalp is not the same.
Is that very common?
It is pretty common for patients that need recurrent procedures. Believe it or not, the challenging part of the operation is not the brain component. It will be the scalp component and the skull. And there is a good book. I don't know if you know the book by Henry Marsh. He's a very senior neurosurgeon from the UK, and he wrote an amazing novel. And basically on chapter 31 is a chapter about a young girl that had a recurrent atypical ependymoma. And he didn't want to operate on her, not because of the challenging of the brain tumor, but the challenging scalp. And he did operate, and he said, I don't want to imagine what's going to happen to this wound once I'm done. And when he went to run on the patient, he didn't even wanted to open the dressing to not see the ugly wound underneath that. That just shows you that there's so much, we have all the skill set and all the tools to really fix scalp and skull problem to patients that underwent surgery. This is one component. The other component is patients that come to us and they want to make sure that, let's say, they're going to look there themselves again. So we work very closely with the engineers, and we have labs in Northwood called Northwood 3D Labs. And I work with all the different, industry partners to really customize with 3D printed designs implants. So, for example, a patient that had a brain tumor that completely invaded the frontal lobe, the dura, and the bone. If you just resect the tumor and find some off-the-surface solution, it's going to be very evident that the patient had procedure. It's going to be deformed. But now with 3D printed, and I'm happy to say that we're leading the research on that, we can really customize printing biomaterials to go into patients' head. And the next step of that, those biomaterials are actually smart. They can do things. What do I mean by that? It's not just a plastic to cover the brain. It can really provide us some information. And this is the next step, or the research that we're doing at Lenox Hill, is to see what type of information we can get from smart implants that we can print with computers and embed stuff in them. And it's very exciting, and I'm very excited to see where this goes.
You would automatically think that, wouldn't your brain reject a foreign object, or your body would reject a foreign object? How does that not happen, or how does it stay functioning?
Yeah, well, it's a valid point, because if you look at the literature, every time you hit cranioplasty in literature, meaning cranioplasty is replacing the bone or a missing bone with some kind of coverage, there's very high complication rates, actually up to 40%. In fact, cranioplasty is one of the most highest risk surgeries in neurosurgery because of complications.
Wow.
For what you said, rejection and whatnot, or mainly infection, bone resorption. So we really have to have those skill set on how to work with the scalp and the covering and the bone to mitigate those complication risks when it comes to cranioplasty. If you think about the neurosurgeon, our training, and the last 100 years, we focus on the brain, all our research efforts on brain tumors and really understanding the mechanism and the biology of the brain. Mm-hmm. But we didn't really focus on the covering of the brain and the dura and the bone and the scalp, which really plays a central role in overall patient outcomes. And this is where the combination of expertise comes into play to basically, avoid or reduce those complication rates significantly.
Mm-hmm. What are some complications after reconstruction?
So I would say the main complications, every time you put a foreign body, now that we use technologies and acrylics and whatnot, the number one feared complication is infection. Infection means that if you don't really use the skill set to work with the scalp, and the scalp breaks down, and now there is exposed foreign body, the risk of that is no antibiotics will reach the foreign body because it doesn't have blood supply. So that means the patient needs to do another operation to remove that. Mm-hmm. Then 6 weeks of antibiotics through PICC line. Now think about it, 3 times a day, the patients have to be home connected to a pole getting antibiotics for 6 weeks of their life. Some patients, 6 weeks is a very long time for their overall survival. Then they have to come back for another surgery to reconstruct, which makes things even more harder.
Wow. Can you talk about the blood-brain barrier disruption with ultrasound? I know we've talked about it previously, but how does that relate to the work that you're actually doing at Lenox Hill?
That's a great point. We actually had a meeting the other day with a team at Feinstein. What we found that if you think about it this way, if the blood-brain barrier is the gatekeeper for medicine to be delivered in high concentration to the tumors, and we know at this point that no drug available out there to really get high concentration to the tumor, we start to think about all those different creative ways to bypass this barrier, just for the audience. What we're finding that using those customized cranial implant that we 3D printed, they have special abilities to penetrate the skull with ultrasound. Now, we know that ultrasound in certain settings can break the blood-brain barrier. So our research right now is focused on, can we implant at the time of surgery for GBM patient, for example, newly diagnosed GBM, we implant a little window that is made of special acrylic. They go to the standard therapy, but at a certain time in their protocol, we do a neuromodulation with ultrasound to break the blood-brain barrier and open it around where the tumor was. And we know that 90% of the tumor is coming back 2 centimeters around the cavity. And everybody is very excited about it. There are a lot of clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, clinical trials, to try to understand how ultrasound could be used for the blood-brain barrier. However, there are limitations to that in the current paradigms. What we're trying to add and to investigate, can we do a standard surgery, a standard procedure, implant that window, and open the blood-brain barrier to deliver better chemotherapy for the tumor? And everybody is very excited. I think it's going to be hopefully the next jump in GBM treatments.
What do you feel like the timeline for that is?
Very, very soon.
Okay.
The reason is there are already ongoing clinical trials. We're already doing this. We're just combining the two modalities and need to, recruit the first patients who see results.
Wow. I'm excited to follow along and see what happens there. Being that you're the only neuroplastic neurosurgeon in the world, who do you see as a mentor? Because I feel like typically in most fields, there's someone that's kind of like paved the way before you, but you're the one paving the way for everyone else. So like when you are faced with a situation, where do you go?
Listen, Amber, this is a very touchy question, because I really look at mentors as teachers, life teachers, and I have many teachers and mentors along my career and life, both personal and professional teachers and mentors. And I try to find mentors all the time, because I think that find a good mentor. Mm-hmm. This is what you want to do in life, no matter what you do. I would say that the founding father of neuroplastic surgery field is a very special man called Dr. Chad Gordon, and he was the founding father of this at Hopkins, together with the chairman Henry Brim. And every time I face challenging situations when it comes to the neuroplastic component, I reach out to the most experienced men right now. But I would say that there are a lot of things that he told me, you have a toolbox now. During fellowship, 2 years fellowship, you could never see everything, but you have the toolbox to fix and help patients and fix things that you never encountered. And whenever I have those challenging cases, I reach out to my partners at Lenox Hill, Langer, Bukvar, D'Amico, showing them the case, really formulate a plan, coming up with solutions together to really make sure that we are together on this and working as a team to help the patient whenever you face those, extremely, extremely challenging situation. I have 2 patients right now on the floor that it's like a 1 in a million type of cases that there is no literature about that, and you have to be creative and trust yourself and trust your partners.
How do you normally prepare for surgery? Because I know you mentioned you have 2. You're going right after this podcast. You're going into the OR.
Yeah.
I don't think that podcast is typically the standard preparation for you to go to the operating room. Like, what does that normally look like for you?
I'll tell you, Amber, I consider my profession as a high performance athlete, right? When you're a high performance athlete and the best, playing amongst the best players in the world, this is a lifetime preparation. It's not a one thing. So I really dedicate my life to prepare for the challenges that my work might be, and that includes sleep and meditation and nutrition and and coach performances and really learning how to optimize my body and my mind on a daily basis to be at my best. So it's not what did you do this morning? It's really how you bring all the faculties together to be a high-performance athlete. We're really dealing with high-stakes situations. Patients are the worst times in the most complicated, phases. I believe myself that I really see my profession as a high performance. So my preparation starts first thing in the morning all the way down when I'm going to sleep. It's the food that I eat, the mental work that I do, the books that I read, the physical activity that I do, and the most important, the type of support I get from my family. Mm-hmm. Because I think that some people forget that when you're a high-performance athlete, many people are lousy at home and lousy in their personal life. I think that for me to have high-performance status, I really have to focus on performing at my best with my home, my kids, my family. And while you do this together, it really allows me to be at my best every single day.
So speaking
this is great.
Let's hear more about the supplement regimen and the wellness routine that you have.
This is great. This is just show you the type of fun that we're having at work. And
you guys, I just walk in and I have a blast. I'm like, I don't even work here.
This is really a great example for the type of fun that we have at work and how we really share our personal life with my partners. And I couldn't be happier where I am. So I take a lot of functional micronutrients. And
where did you decide to start taking this?
That's a great question. So I based my regimen on the day of the week.
Okay.
And I based my regimen on high quality studies. By the way, you know how I got exposed to that? The Huberman Lab.
Oh, okay.
Huberman Lab has a long podcast about those supplements.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I took his regimen, his recommendations, as I value his opinion. Mm-hmm. And it works, guys. It works.
What is your aside from that, like your wellness routine, like your nutrition look like? I know you mentioned that you're on a very strict, what is it called? Intermittent fasting schedule?
Well, I do some things. So I divide my routines into, I would say, 3 main components is what do I do for my physical health, my, I would say, emotional health or emotional well-being, and spiritual health. And basically every one of them has a very specific things that I do. But just to summarize, I have a very particular diet. I don't eat breakfast. I try to be in ketosis every day until at least 12 or 1 o'clock. Then I do, during the week when I'm full on, I have to be full on engaged. My diet is very restricted. I try to do high intensity workouts at least 3 times a week. There's very high intensity, high resistance. And I take a lot of functional micronutrients. I would say my emotional health or my mental well-being, I would say during the weekend when I have to work, I really go, I zoom out and go all out. If you think about full on during the week, I'm really full out during the weekend, really proactively disconnecting. And, if I need to stare at the wall, I'll stare at the wall to sort of center yourself, meditate. And I go with my wife every weekend as a routine now to do cryotherapy, so to do ice baths, cold plunges, and saunas.
I went into a cold plunge yesterday. Actually, for the first time in my life, I'm 28. I went to the cold plunge for the first time. I was miserable. Yeah, I went in for 0.1 second.
It's tough.
I went like halfway to my knees first, and I saw like this woman go in, and I was like, well, I can't like not go in now. And I went in, it was like 52 degrees. It wasn't even like that cold, apparently. I was miserable.
I tell you
like
why.
There was needles all over my body.
It's tough. It's hard. And I think that going into cold plunge without mental preparation is like trying to drive a motorcycle with never being on a bicycle.
Well, we should have done the podcast yesterday. I didn't know. I just tried to walk into the cold plunge.
It's hard, and you have to, before you go, you need to do like a mental preparation of breathing. At least what works for me, and my wife is an expert, is really mental preparation and breathing exercise. Because, as I said, if you never did that, just going into is like trying to ride a bike with ever riding a bike.
Yeah.
And so we do this every weekend. We do the sauna and the cold plunge. We really disconnect and sort of decompress for 2 hours, completely zoom out from everything and proactively rest. And then the spiritual health is, the time I spend with my family, the gratitude of what I have in life, the amazing talks that I have with my partners, Buchwauer and Langer, really, great philosophers for life, and the amount of time that I spend talking to my loved ones and family. And if I manage to do all of those three, I think that I'm pretty much ready to perform at the best the following weekend. But it wouldn't be possible if you all in during the week and you're not all out during the weekend and really proactively looking at the ceilings for an hour and do nothing or meditate or read. It's very hard to, at least in my profession, the way that I see things, it's very hard to decompress and get ready for the following week because we are very busy and we're dealing with very challenges situations in the OR.
Yeah. What is your favorite thing about what you do?
I think that it's going to sound cliche, right? But it is really that thing that makes me wake up in the morning every day, and it's the interaction with the patients and their families. The amount of impact that we're having on people's life. And I don't want to say patients, because patients have kids, patients have parents, patients have friends, and we're all connected in that way. The amount of influence that you're having on people's life is so tremendous, and I'm very humbled and privileged to be able to offer with my own hands and knowledge those patients such a significant change in their life that what makes me wake up in the morning and do what I do.
That's incredible. Where do you see the future of neuroplastics going?
Listen, the amount of progress that we made during the last decade has been such an exponential growth that I cannot even imagine where this thing is going to go. From really adding as many neuroplastic surgeons to the big academic center to help those patients that need, as I said, 1 out of every 3 patients, and many of them not talking about that. And let me give you one example. When a woman, God forbid, get diagnosed with breast cancer, she will see the oncologist, the surgical oncologist, then she will see the plastic surgeon. Together, they will come up with an oncoplastic reconstruction. The breast cancer will be removed, and the same settings, the breast will be reconstructed. Mm-hmm. So why is that? So the woman get out of the OR with a preoperative appearance, the sense of identity, self, confidence is preserved, and it's going to promote better prognosis. Brain tumor patients get diagnosed, they see the surgeons, so we take them to the OR, we remove the tumor, then what happens if they have problems?
Right.
Temporal deformity, scalp defect, CSF, like meningocele, whatnot. Then where do they go? So I really hope that neuroplastic surgery is going to expand and really take over every major academic center. On the research view, the way that I see it from the inside research, we are really moving towards implanting technologies in people's heads. And I was in last March, I did this 15 hours operation, including Feinstein Institute of Biomedical Research, where we implanted 5 electrodes arrayed into the patient's brain. He had a spinal cord injury, so after training, he can start move his arms.
Wow.
And he couldn't barely move his wrist, and he didn't have sensation. And now 6 months after, he can start move his arms and have sensation just because we bypassed the injury. I think that neuroplastic surgery goes into what can we do with implantable neurotechnology to fix brain problems. BBB disruption, drug delivery, monitoring, surveillance, AI. What if I can take the information and the data that I have in my phone and put it in a skull implant?
That's fascinating.
That's what I think.
Like talks like this make me wish that I was a neurosurgeon. But then before this, you were trying to show me a picture of something, and I was like, I can't even. I was like, 15 feet away. I was like, I can't even look at that. So incredible respect for what you do. If there's any medical student right now that's listening to this that's like, oh, this sounds super interesting, how can they learn more about neuroplastics, and like what is a route that someone that's currently in schooling can take to sort of get into this field of what you're doing?
Yeah. So it's really, neuroplastic surgery is really becoming very popular. So we have our, interest group for medical students and high school students and residents that we have almost 200 people in it that
at Lenox
Hill that are interested in neuroplastic surgery. And thanks to our research fellow, we send those updates, and they reach out to me directly, and they reach out to the program to see more, learn more. And I'm always very happy to answer any questions by social media, email, or through the research interest or the research group that gets let's say quarterly emails about the progress and about the research and about the opportunities and how we can learn more and how we can do more. And I think this is the best way to come reach out and learn more. The skies is the limit here.
Yeah. And for anyone that's interested, we're going to be linking your social media and the Lenox Hill Neurosurgery Instagrams in our caption here. But Dr. Nati Ben-Shalom, thank you so much for joining me. I think it was super informative, and I think a lot of people will be really interested to hear about this new enticing field in neuroplastics. So thank you.
Thank you, Amber. It was lovely.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM. To learn more about the Glioblastoma Research Organization, you can visit us online at gbmresearch.org, on Instagram or Facebook at Glioblastoma Research, on Twitter at glioblastoma.org, or on LinkedIn as Glioblastoma Research Organization. To start your own fundraiser, to donate, or to learn how to get more involved with the organization, please email us at contact@gbmresearch.org, and we'll see you on the next episode of Glioblastoma AKA GBM.